Welcome to the SPL Rundown, your weekly look at all the SPL action. This week, we have a very big show with two special guests. I'm joined by the wonderful Hayzer, former SPL coach, and current SPL coach, the coach from Radiance Biggy, also joins us, along with our resident Olympian here, Wraithyn. This week, I also had the pleasure of sitting down with Zapman, the ADC for Pittsburgh Knights, so be sure to check that out a little later on. But first, we're here to talk about the games, and we're going to start with, I think, maybe the upset of the week, right? Renegades versus Ghost. I didn't think that Renegades had a chance in this set. What were your guys' thoughts on this set?
It was the upset of the season. It was the upset of the century. I don't think I think we laughed about this game last week when we were picking who was going to win. You know, we said we were optimistic but not stupid, I think is what we all said. We were picking. But no, that was an awesome game to watch. I think the Renegades played well. I don't think, we do this every week where it's like, okay, did Ghost play like crap or did the Renegades play well? And I think it was kind of a little bit of a mixture of both, but it was good to see that the competition's a little closer than we all think it is. Yeah,
were you guys surprised with Ghost? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would. Well, I think Ghost had been, everybody had noticed Ghost had been on a bad run of form, I think, in recent games. I think they hadn't looked like Ghost as of late. And I think this is where, I guess, we kind of realized how bad a run of form it was. And then, I don't know. I think they kind of got in their own heads. They had game 1 won, and they went for a risky end. 2 Phoenixes down. They just all in the Titan. Got owned by Renegades. And then, that was it, really.
Biggie, any thoughts?
Yeah. I think, Ghost is definitely inconsistent right now. They're definitely not playing as well as I think they were last split. But also, I feel like game 2 was just based on game 1, where I feel like Ghost probably tilted a lot because the way they tried to end, seemed like such a tilt play. I feel like they could have just got mid Phoenix and sat there and just been patient, and they would have won the game in like a minute or two. But they kind of just Twig just walked in and got rat dunked and stuff. It's just a really forced end. And so it was definitely unexpected. I mean, especially since they had Roe playing last week, and then they were kind of trialing Solo Troll again or whatever to see how he came back into the team. It was pretty fast turnaround. So, and especially against Ghost, I don't think anyone expected it.
Yeah, I know. I definitely didn't expect the turnaround from Solar Troll, which is, I guess, the other big story here is that Solar Troll comes back and basically looks like the world beater, against this, Final K here on the Cthulhu and King Arthur.
Yeah, I mean, I think he looked good. I actually think SOT had the better games he had were in the second Renegade set of the week. I think as a whole, I really like the way Renegades drafted in this set, though. I thought that was the big surprise for me, is I think they had some cool new ideas. They did the Rat Morrigan draft in game 1, which was cool with the Sobek and the Kuzan. Their whole thing was, I don't know, I loved that draft. I thought their drafts were great. Yeah. And I think SOT did come back in and do well, but I think it was a pretty good team performance, I thought, by Renegades. It wasn't like an individual taking over. I think they all played well together.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe for them it was a fact of sometimes as a team, when you're kind of struggling, you really have to hit rock bottom. You kind of have to have that explosion where you're kind of at each other's throats, because otherwise there's no way to rebuild, just tension and passive aggression and stuff. And I think maybe that's what happened to Renegades. They kind of okay, they got completely stomped the week before. They had using their coach to sub, and then they probably hashed out a lot of issues, and they came back into scrims completely refreshed, and so that probably helped them. And I think the bigger thing is what Hayzer said, the fact that they took a game off SSG, who looks really, really good right now, is probably the bigger kind of catalyst for me compared to winning the Ghost game.
Sure. Well, let's hold our thoughts on that for that set. All right then. Well, moving on to the next set of the week, which was PK versus United. And PK, I have in my notes here that Paul stomps on Hebo, and this was just another sort of classic PK winning against maybe some of the lower end teams in this league. You guys' first thoughts on this PK versus United set?
Yeah, we were saying anybody can take a game off of anybody, apart from nobody can take a game off of PK from the bottom 3, and PK can't take a game off of anybody from the top 4. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a mental issue or if they really feel like the gap's that big, or if it's just PK's playstyle works really well into these slightly less organized teams. It's just bizarre how good they look against teams like United, and then they just look like a wet fish when they're up against anyone from the top four.
Sure,
I don't know. I feel like I've been talking about it over and over, but it just doesn't change, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my exact thought. I feel like it is so strange that, like, I know us, for example, sometimes we have like some difficult games against bottom teams, but we show up against top teams as well and take like most of those sets. But then PK will just dominate the bottom, like the teams below them. But any team above them, they just seem to they're like a completely different team. And I mean, you kind of have to think that either it's like an online thing or a mental thing for sure, because it's not like they're not skilled. And you also have to think that this is the exact like way they were last year, even without Fred when they had Sam. Until they won Worlds, they were the exact same way. They just made a good run at the play-ins, and then they had like an insane run at Worlds. So I don't know, something that they should probably. I mean, I'm sure they're self-aware of it, but it's probably a really hard thing to fix, especially if it's mental.
Sure. I know I talked to Zap this week about that, and he basically said, you know, PK this phase is exactly the same as PK in phase 1, which is exactly the same as SK last year in terms of, like, you know, winning versus the bottom teams and losing versus the higher end competition. And he basically said it's like basically been a mirror of phase 1, phase 2 so far. So
yeah, I've heard them say that kind of thing a few times, and I do kind of worry that they've trapped themselves into this feeling of thinking it's okay. Because of how last year went, you know, last year, but I don't know. I don't know if you can you rely on that, just getting hot at Worlds time? Maybe they think that they're taking it easy and they're going to accelerate. But I don't know. If I were them, I'd be a bit more panicky, I think. But I guess I've never won Worlds, so what do I know?
Yeah, I think the odds of Lightning striking twice like that is very slim. So I probably wouldn't be riding on that. The fact that, like, oh yeah, we're just kind of like a team that shows up when it matters. I feel like that's a pretty bad mentality, but I don't think they're the kind of people like that. Like, I know Neil and Fred really well. They're not the kind of people who are just like, yeah, this is just how we are.
Right.
They're definitely self-critical and want to improve. And just, it's probably like a really deep issue amongst the whole team that might take some time to fix.
Sure. The last thing I had about this set is we saw Serb solo both games from Variety here. I'm not sure it looked the greatest here in this set, especially. What are you guys' thoughts on Serb solo? I know we've seen maybe a couple other Guardians coming into the solo lane as well recently, but what are your thoughts on this?
I think he's
nice for the.
Yeah, go. You go, Ray.
I was just gonna say it's nice for the anti-heal, but I would thought it was kind of uninspired personally. But I don't know if that's the game, the set, the team.
Yeah, I think it's like a decent situational pick. Hello, Fra.
Stop it.
Yeah, I think it's just a situational pick. I think the god's not bad. I think if it looks good, it looks good, and it's definitely one of his kind of picks this year. I feel like Variety's kind of not playing like the top tier solid picks, so he's kind of has to have a few like off-brand picks, and that's obviously his main one. He's played it a few times in a few sets, and it's probably just a comfort pick for him. And I'm not sure if like you switch that pick out if the team does any better or not.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's almost server's almost exclusively been picked when there's been a Hell or an Afro on the other team. Like, that's the only time I feel like I've seen.
There was a Hell game 2, but there wasn't one. In game 1, I think they had Ama Kama.
Yeah.
Ama Progressor and Kamazots was the only heal in game 1. But I guess
right.
I think people probably like the Serb matchup into Ama, I guess. I don't know. I don't see it being that good, but maybe it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, I mean, just from the set in general, you can kind of tell that, like, Biggie kind of alluded to it earlier. You got to hit that rock bottom to bounce back, and it kind of seems like United's getting there.
All right, then. Moving on to what Alpha Jackal called maybe the set of the week for this week, which is SSG versus Obey. I think we can all agree that Obey definitely looked a lot better, especially in game 1. But SSG, like you said a little bit earlier, Hayzer, is looking like maybe the best team in the league at this point, given that we haven't seen Radiance play in 2 weeks. So what are you guys' thoughts on this SSG versus Obey set?
We almost saw an Obey 2-0, in my opinion. Like, we were... well, Maybe not, because you gotta go the distance, right?
Sure.
I think we had a commanding control over both of those games.
Yeah.
Until they kind of threw it away, but I really enjoyed watching those. That was definitely the set of the week for sure.
Yeah, I think Obey's definitely improved. But the thing with SSG is they've never necessarily been a good early team. Like, they'll lose early game to any team. They just, at the moment, seem to, like, flick a switch, and they're just... synergy just becomes insane, and they just run the map and win games. I feel like that's what happened kind of both games. They were just kind of chilling, waiting until they were ready to kind of group up, and then they just were just the better team.
Yeah, agreed. It was like, I think especially the duo lane from Obey have been doing a lot better in the early game, and they ran the early game in duo again. I think Vote dropped a bit of a Fido, which he hasn't done in a while. He's been looking a lot better this phase. Sure. But then, it was like there was a Gold Fury fight where SSG just suddenly basically won the game from behind. They got a 5-0 at gold, got FG, won the game. That was like it. It was crazy.
You know, this reminds me a little bit of what the casters used to say about like the old NRG squad, you know, where they would like play, you know, maybe not the cleanest, but then like 21 or 22 minutes come and like the switch is flipped and now they're like winning the game no matter what. Do you guys feel that way? Is that maybe something that Raffer has like sort of brought to this new squad?
I think that's pretty spot on. Like, I was kind of thinking that too, but I think it's more just maybe I don't know what it is. I guess maybe they're not an overly aggressive team. I've never really like coached any of the players. They seem a more like calculated, methodical team and more calculated players. Like Raffer and Cherry are kind of like running around your jungle, just trying to steal your farm and just get farms so then they can be strong. And I think that's kind of what's happening. They're just getting to a point where they're like, okay, we can win as a team, and then they just like, okay, let's go do it.
I've never really thought about it before, but I think it might be a remnant of Cherry's playstyle from when he was previously playing on teams when he was playing from Egypt. He was always playing these setup characters, and obviously they wouldn't want to fight early because Cherry was basically useless.
Right.
Well, he wasn't useless, but he wasn't great in these early game fights, and I feel like he's almost like conditioned himself into he never looks for early plays, really. He doesn't look for early ganks. He just kind of farms the map, and I guess when your jungler's not looking for early plays, you don't really look for early plays as a whole. And maybe that's why his teams have always typically been sort of team fight based, and he's, I guess, gotten used to the role and kept going with it.
Sure. This week, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the one and only Steven Zapman Zapas, world champion and ADC for Pittsburgh Knights. Check it out, guys. Hey guys, I'm here with my good friend Steven Zapman Zapas, the ADC for Pittsburgh Knights, and, world champion as well. Here to talk about Phase 2, Phase 1, and his career as a whole. And I think we should probably start with Phase 2, which I think has been fairly similar to Phase 1, where you guys have been sort of winning versus the bottom teams and maybe losing versus the top teams. And to be honest, this really doesn't even seem that different from the SK season last year. Are you guys still just sort of like in that mindset of, let's get to the big dance and we'll make some noise?
What's going on, Pam? Thanks again for having me, by the way. And man, Phase 2 has pretty much been a mirror copy of last year's SK run. We have this problem with consistency. We have this problem playing against the top teams where like we may not be as aggressive, or we overcomplicate things, or we just do dumb stuff, or we forget stuff. And then against the bottom teams, we're so I don't know, carefree in a way. We just know we're gonna win because we have the game plan all fleshed out and like nothing really goes wrong. But against the top teams, there's always like one little thing that goes wrong, and then, it snowballs for us there. And that's pretty much how it was when we were on SK. That's how it is right now. And honestly, it's probably how it's going to go for the rest of the season. Most likely. I don't know. We'll see. Are
you guys like comfortable with that? Because I'm sure losing is not great a feeling as a team, and like obviously winning makes you feel better. But like I think you guys as a team have maybe dealt with this sort of like roller coaster type season. Is this something that you guys are a little more comfortable with now, having like gone through it once, even in Phase 1 and last year?
Yeah, for sure. I think we have maybe a mental advantage when it comes to those kind of things, because we've had rough seasons and we've seen the results. We know our potential. We're the defending world champs. We went through I think 2 years in a row at Worlds. We went through placements. Right, and then we made it to semis one year, and then we won it the next year. So we're very comfortable being where we are. It's never fun losing. Like, some of us will get upset. I'll get upset, but at the end of the day, it's that heat of the moment, and then it's like over, you know. And then after that, we're like, okay, you know, same shit, different day in terms of losing or why we lost. And then we're like, oh, we got to improve it in scrims, and then, you know, focus up in scrims, guys. And then game day comes around, same shit, different day. You know what I mean?
I know.
But yeah, we're comfortable with it, and you know, we're gonna keep trying to work to get better. We do want to win during the regular season. We're not letting it affect us where it's, you know, something that hurts the team.
Right.
You know, we obviously are like, okay, we got to work on X, Y, and Z, keep practicing and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, if it clicks, it clicks. If it doesn't click, you know, we know that we can turn it up for playoffs as well. So we're in a comfortable spot.
Do you think that this comfortability maybe helps, especially because there's a long phase, this split, you know, where there's a potential for maybe things to go from like high peaks to like really deep valleys in the same phase? Do you think, you know, having dealt with something like that is beneficial in a longer phase?
It is when in terms of keeping the team together, not hating each other, not resenting each other, being comfortable with each other throughout the whole year. That's one thing that our team has dealt with. I've teamed with a lot of these guys, except for QO, for many years. And we know each other. We know our quirks. We know like what pisses each other off. We know, you know, if this guy's mad today, he's not gonna be mad tomorrow, or like, you know, nothing's personal. So like, it really helps us stay close together as a team. And like I said before, not be resentful, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're pretty much comfortable.
That's good. That's good. I mentioned the long phase because I've basically been asking every pro who comes on the show about, you know, burnout and things like that, those things that are associated with having basically an extra set of games in this phase. Is that something that you guys as a team have been dealing with? And if so, how have you guys been dealing with burnout?
Yeah, I think every team goes through burnout. The best way to combat that, I would say, is, you know, monitor how much you scrim. You know, the scrim has to be productive. Something our team believes in is quality over the quantity. Like, it's cool if you scrim 10 hours a day, but if 9 out of those 10 hours you guys are just going through the motions, you're not really learning anything. What's the point? You know, you might as well have time to scrim. So what we try to do is we do double blocks when we feel like we need it. And the most important thing that we look out for, our coach looks out for, is that we're all in it mentally. And so we get a solid 3 hours of learning and, you know, figuring out new stuff. And if we're doing really bad or we have big games coming up, we'll do double blocks and things like that. But it's the most important thing to us is everyone being there mentally and giving it their all, so we're actually using the time productively.
Sure. I especially remember like Bera's answer to this, and he said that burnout is kind of a big concern for him, especially because he's a streamer also. And I know that you're a really big streamer as well. Basically stream every day. So is that something that you're thinking about, maybe taking some streams off and things like that, just to not get bored of Smite, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing you bring up. And that's something I dealt with early on in my career. I never really streamed consistently, you know, month after month, week after week. I always streamed for like a month straight. Then I'm like, oh my God, I just hate Smite. You know, I'm scrimming all the time, blah, blah, blah. I'm done with streaming for like a month, you know, and that really hurt my growth as a streamer or a content creator, because I kept taking months off or like 2 months at a time, and you kind of just lose all the momentum you had, you know? And it wasn't really only until this year that I started being consistent, you know, month after month after month. And I think I've been able to, I guess it's called compartmentalize. You know, like I have my streaming here, my scrims here, you know, my family time here, and I kind of don't let them interact with each other, interfere with each other, even though there is overlap. Sometimes on my stream, I'm having a rough day or I had a bad day at scrims, and, you know, it's obvious, like I'm in a bad mood or anything like that. But I don't know. I think over the years I dealt with that kind of burnout, and I've matured in a way where I can, you know, for the most part, compartmentalize or separate, you know, the different jobs, because streaming and playing Smite professionally, they're two different things. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I tried my best to separate them. I tried my best to have a certain perspective on things and, you know, treat each accordingly with the right attitude.
So now that we've seen maybe some of these bottom teams, and I think even you guys everyone has improved the quality of their play, you know, as we've sort of gone through phase 2. What are your expectations for the league as a whole as we get into maybe like the last third of this phase? Do you feel like there's going to be a lot of lower teams maybe taking games and sets off of these teams that are maybe higher in the rankings. Like I know we saw Ghost lose this week to Renegades, which I don't think anyone really predicted, especially after the Solar Troll benching. Is that sort of like a sign of what's to come?
Well, I think as every year in the past, as the season comes to a close, teams are becoming better. Everything's becoming more second nature. The meta gets more stable. So you'll see teams get closer. Also, like we discussed earlier, burnout happens. Top teams that were in the top, it's very hard to not be complacent, especially in scrims if you're winning all the time. So you start seeing those teams kind of fall off a little bit. The lower teams are still hungry. They kind of, close the gap. And yeah, as the season goes on, I expect more quote unquote upsets like that to happen. But I mean, that's just kind of like the natural flow of the season. You know what I mean?
I don't even like to call them upsets because I think even right now, like the parity in the league is at an all-time high where, it's just like every game it feels like is almost on a knife's edge and could tilt either way, For sure.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think the top teams are top because they have a lot of experience in their play. And, if you notice, they all have the same play style as they did last year. You know what I mean? Ghost, they rival, they running down. Space Station, they play the exact same way like last year. They play that late game style. They farm. And Radiance is a brand new team. They have their own style, but they got a bunch of great players, right? Us, we're doing the same crap as last year where we like int against good teams, play bad teams. But we know how to win. We know how to do this. We get in our own heads or we do something dumb. And it's literally a mirror image of last year. The top teams this year are the same as last year. The bottom teams are the same as last year, right? And it's just because that style of that team, it kind of doesn't change. And if you actually notice, Space Station, in the beginning of phase 1, they were trying a lot of different stuff. And that's why they were getting smacked down, And all of a sudden, they started whipping out the Kali. They started whipping out the Hera, right? And they're back to form. They play that. They went back to their old style that they're comfortable with because the team is so in tune with that.
Right.
And that's why I think, the seasons look so similar. I would say the only wild card is Sanguine because they're a brand new team that came in, right? And, they're playing well. They're playing hungry because they're a brand new team. They got a lot to prove being from LATAM. Yeah. So I would say a lot of this season for me personally is not a surprise. I expected those, other than Sanguine, I expected, those top 3 besides Sanguine to be there. And I expected us to be middle of the pack, basically. I was hoping we would be a little bit more consistent and beat better teams, but I kind of see the same stuff happening that happened last year.
Sure.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it on that.
Next session here is we're going to talk a little bit about maybe your career. I mean, you're basically one of the longest standing SPL players. So, it'd be a shame not to ask about things that have happened in your past. So I'll start out with this. A lot of supports that you've played with have gone on to win world championships. And I even think you had a propensity for maybe bringing up not amateurs, but like maybe unknowns in competitive. Do you see yourself as a mentor to some of these newer players that you bring into the league and things like that? And is that something that you look for when you're like constructing teams and things like that?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. Is my early days, Curse and Root, I was very hands-on. I was very micromanaging type of person. Like I would pretty much tell everyone what to do. Like, okay, 2 minutes or like 30 seconds of buffs coming up. You X and XY rotate here and all that kind of stuff. I was very like hands-on like that, and it was actually a detriment to my team where like to micromanage everything because no one really understood it for themselves in a sense, So like they would get so used to me telling them what to do that when I didn't feel like doing it one day in scrims, we just get destroyed because they didn't really learn it themselves.
Sure.
So that was something that kind of filled me with a lot of game knowledge. And then I remember when I think when Aurora left, we picked up Polar Bear Mike. And we had an option to pick up Ionic or like some other experienced player. But I remember telling Lassus, I was like, listen, I just want someone that's just going to listen to me. You know what I mean? Not have any opinions on their own. And then Mike was a backup to Brochacho at the time at High Five. Yeah. And I remember, I'll never forget this, but there was this game in ranked where he played Ymir and he had like a really sick wall. And I was like, this guy's pretty sick. You know, I just had that in the back of my head, and like months later, had the opportunity to pick him up, and I was like, let's get Mike. You know, he's a sub for a team. Obviously, he's hungry, and I think, you know, he'll just listen to everything I say. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I picked up Mike, and then, you know, I worked a lot with Mike, and then you know, that year ended up unsuccessful in season 2. Mm-hmm. We lost to Fnatic, trying to make it to Worlds, right? And then roster changes, and then with Aurora, Aurora was more like, he was less impressionable as Mike was back then, because he was more of an established player. Yeah. And you know, we worked a lot together, and he kind of basically knew everything. And but yeah, that was kind of my thing with supports, is like, I really liked people that would just listen and then I could work with, you know what I mean? Didn't really have an ego or anything like that. And those guys, they didn't have egos. Aurora was such a pleasure to work with, because he was always open to you know, criticism and opinions, but he also was confident enough to know when, you know, he was right, or like, and things like that. So I definitely love both of them. And Neil's kind of the same way, where like, Neil's confident, but he was also, you know, coming from that 0-30 ALG team, you know what I mean? So he's very open. He was very open to criticism, and you know, they complimented me well. You know, I wasn't always the nicest guy back in the day, you know, especially to my supports. But yeah, now you know, now I've matured and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I don't even know where this question is going to. I just kept talking about my supports, but you know, I love them all, and they all like, you know, have unique personalities, and they're all awesome guys.
Are there like players other than supports that you feel like maybe you've helped shape or mold or like mentor in other ways? Yeah,
I would say like the jungle role, especially. I worked closely with Sam a lot. If you talk to our team back in the day, and like, you know, who I always would get into it with, it was always with Sam. You know, I'm like, Sam, what are you doing? You know, Sam, you should be over here. Sam, do this and that. You know, it was a lot of fun. And Sam, he was always a good sport about it, you know, even though I know he secretly was like this mother effer, you know what I mean? And, but he was always a good sport about it. And we improved as a team, and, you know, and Sam's just a beast player and an awesome guy.
Well, now that you mentioned Sam, I don't know if you've seen the extended cut of my interview with him, but I asked him about mentors that he's had, and he actually gave a lot of credit to you for like showing him the ropes and things like that. So, you know, it's good to see that.
Oh, he did? Yeah. Oh, that's nice of him.
He was like, man, Zap really, like, he basically helped me out a lot early on, especially, I think, because you guys were on Trifecta that year before. I think that's basically when you were teaching him the ropes and things like that. So
the thing about Sam is he was always an amazing player. What I kind of bring to like these guys is the finer details. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm getting ganked. Immediately look for the left side heart. Like, I'm getting yanked, right? Immediately look for the left side harpies. Look for their left side backs. Why are you rotating to the right side? You're already late. Like, you know, like all these little details, the fine tuning. You know, these guys already are like insanely good, insanely whatever. But something I brought to the table would be just that experience that I have playing for so long. You know what I mean? And always thinking about the game. It's just those finer details that really just kind of makes them the insane players they are today.
Sure.
You know.
All right, then. Well, here's the time for you, Zap. The floor is yours. Give your shout outs to whoever you want. And I just want to give you a huge thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you coming, and it's been a great conversation. The floor is yours.
For sure. Shout outs to my team for dealing with my my divaness sometimes that I have. Shout out to all the people watching and all the viewers that you know, Smite actually gets a lot of love on Twitch and a lot of love on YouTube and other like social media platforms. So big shout out to you guys. Pretty much kind of keep the game alive. It's a game that's been going on for 9 years now. So honestly, I think it's very impressive for Smite to maintain what it's maintained. It's actually been growing a lot. It's like tripled its player base over the last year, and the numbers look good in terms of Twitch, YouTube, and things like that. And it helps content creators like me and everyone else out there make a living. So thank you guys so much for that. And last but not least, big shout out to you, Pam, we need more people like you to do things like this content that's third party, that's not, you know, funded by Hayzer or anything like that. It's like you taking the time out, your love for the game and your love for the scene to do these kind of things, which I think is awesome. And that's pretty much it, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for coming on. It was a great talk.
No problem.
So I think the next set this week was supposed to be Radiance versus Sanguine, but unfortunately, again, it got postponed this week due to, I guess, everyone has basically said that someone has gotten COVID on the Radiance squad. So, I just wanted to ask you guys, how can maybe rescheduling these games affect your team? Because I've seen on the schedule now that both these games are basically going to be played in the last couple weeks of the phase. Is that something that you guys are thinking about might sort of affect those games that are later on in the phase, Biggie?
I mean, it could. I haven't really looked, and I don't think it's like 100% like confirmed
Sure.
when we play. I'll have to talk to Cooper, but I think it would just be put on weeks where we have one game, so we'll just end up playing two. And like, if it's towards the end of this split, it kind of just is what it is.
Right.
Like, there's a kind of a break coming, so there's no excuse for us to kind of get lazy about it. But it was just a decision that we made because I felt like it was the smartest thing to do and take it seriously and not kind of have anything long term happen to anyone. So we weren't really worried. It kind of just is what it is.
Sure. What about you guys?
It's awesome to see this. Awesome to see the support from the league in that manner. By the way, like just willing to accommodate. It's pretty cool.
Yep. Definitely the right way to go. I've always found the admins, the SPL admins are very reasonable. Yeah, they're very reasonable. They're nice. They're good.
Yeah, I mean, they would have been well within their rights to tell you to grab a sub or, you got to play anyway or cancel the games. That's really nice of them to postpone. I think it's good for the league too, right? You don't want to see it could last 3 weeks, right? So you don't want to see a top team taken down by something like that.
Sure.
So that was kudos to them.
Yeah, much better postponing a couple games. Good decision.
Sure.
Just have to see how the momentum goes when you play them. We'll see.
Yeah.
A lot of games to play in a short period of time.
Games,
hopefully you guys aren't on a bad streak.
Maybe we got the Renegades run from last year.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, then. Moving on to the next set of this week. The first set from Sunday, I believe, was Ghost versus PK. And again, this is another classic PK set where you can't beat a top 4 team in the league, but they, and I'm not sure what it is, but I have a Kama Jungle question mark. I don't think that Kama Jungle is particularly effective. Now, what do you guys see in the Kama Jungle? Why do you think PK has been picking it up so much these past couple weeks?
It's always been a comfort pick for Fred. We won Valencia basically spamming Kamazos Ravana, like those, which is like his 2 picks that he plays. I don't think it's necessarily good. I think it can be good. Like sometimes I think we played it once a split where it was just we got to the last pick and it was just the best pick and Kenna felt the most comfortable on it. I'm not sure it's just like a kind of a god pool pick where you're just like, yeah, this is one of my like 4 rotation gods or something. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. He's not overly strong right now, especially in jungle. I don't feel, but I mean, I think again, it's like, is that the problem though?
Okay.
I mean, no. The problem, PK, like they don't have. It's not an individual player having a problem in any of the sets they lose, is it? I don't feel like it anyway. It's not a pick. It's not. It's just they just suck versus the top 4. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They just don't perform versus the top 4. They really don't. And it was the same again. Ghost had been really off form. They didn't look off form versus PK. Whether that was them playing a lot better or just the comparison again, I don't know. I would say that Ghost did look a bit better in this set. I think they drafted pretty well as well. I think I would say that the picks and bans went in the favor of Ghost, but I don't know if it would have mattered too much either way.
Sure. I do want to mention that Mike played Kuzumbo support both games this set. I think we've been seeing a lot more Kuzumbo enter the support meta recently. Is he just, one of the best at dive-in backlines and getting kills and being annoying and doing all the things that supports like to do?
Yeah, I think he's just strong right now. Like, he got buffed, his passive got buffed, and he just kind of does everything. Like, he's good in lane, he's good at kind of 2v1ing carries and, like, not killing them, but just taking them out of a fight. He kind of just does everything you need. Like, he peels well, he dives well. He's, like, really difficult to kill, I feel like, especially if you go Thorns or any, like, other kind of, like, a upgraded shell or something with Nemean as well. So I feel like it's that, and it's just kind of a lot of the top supports are playing him right now.
Yeah, he's just good. That's what I would say as well. I don't know. I think he's like top 3 worthy. He's I don't know. He's one of the more solid supports. I think after you go from Umojo, there's a couple of guys who pick Herc, but other than that, I would say Kuzin's right up there. Is there something I've missed? Is there a support I've missed there? Is there anything?
Well,
I don't know.
Ymir was what the SPL picks.
Ymir, apparently, yeah.
All right, guys. Any final thoughts on this set? Ghost versus PK, then?
No, it's kind of convenient for Ghost to have a really bad tilt set and then get a confidence one right after.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just say after the Renegade set, I was like, okay, surely like PK is gonna get some momentum here, but then they just I don't know what to say. Yeah, it was just super confusing.
Twig had a bit of a nutter in the second game on the AMC.
Yeah.
He kind of crushed it that game, and final on the Hades was kind of inting, but didn't matter too much. But yeah,
that was a pretty crazy strat. Do you like the level 2 proxy? I don't think we've seen something like that come out since a long time ago.
Eager Anubis
or something like that.
Yeah.
I missed that. What happened? I was cooking
dinner. Basically, I think he picked Hades and waited to get full boots at the start.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And then at level 2, he just went behind the tier 1 and proxied in between tier 1 and tier 2 at level 2. So it's pretty interesting strategy. I think it actually worked pretty effectively in allowing Hades to rotate a bit more freely in the mid game and things like that. So I don't know. I thought it was a fairly effective strategy.
Yeah,
it was cool for sure to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if you're against the right solo, it kind of works. But yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, I mean, if you know the jungler's not around, I mean, it could work. And maybe I don't think the timing quite works out, but maybe you can invade the second back camp spawn off of it. I think Fine looked for a mid gank off of it, which was called well ahead of time, and I don't think he got anything. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think it's bad. It was cool, I guess, and looked good. But then once you rotate your Hades, so
yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
I like stuff like that though. It's got to be new and different, right? Like you can't. I hate watching the same old slapfest week after week. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see new strats, new characters. AMC like confused the shit out of me, and I don't know if it was just because somebody finally picked him or like later in the week he got banned. I think right, like so
got banned away from Dardes, I believe. Right?
Is it just Dardes or is he actually like a thing?
Dardes is an AMC player for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely a SSG thing, the way they want to like draft their comps. But also, it is also, I feel like, a comfort pick for Twig if they get a magical ADC. And I think they had Freya game 1 and...
They had Freya game 2, I think.
Oh, game 2 and...
Yeah, Twig played Nuwa game 1.
Is it just the disarm or the fact that he can anti-heal or what?
The AMC? I think he's just a good ADC. He's a good ADC. He also fills that kind of space control that you maybe miss a little bit when you don't have a traditional AoE mage. When you have sort of a Freya or whatever, you have a bit more space control with AMC, and he has pressure. I don't know. I think he's just a good pick.
What do you think about building Sledge on AMC? Is that just the Captain Twig flavor?
Core item.
Well, because Dardes didn't build it in the next set that we're going to talk about. So, what's your thoughts on like maybe Sledge on the mid lane AMC?
Yeah, I think you want to be a bit more tanky, a bit more health if you can on the AMC. I think it's a well stat item, and if he doesn't need, maybe if he's doing well already, you want to invest into sort of a hybrid item to make sure that you're not going to die, basically, which is why I imagine he went for it, and maybe why Dardes skipped it. I don't remember the games well enough to tell you at what point they built it and how they were doing, but it might have been the case where, if you're ahead, you're going to do damage regardless. Might be good to invest into something which is going to help you survive a little bit more, like Sledge.
Sure.
Yeah, I think a bit of tankiness on the god is good. The original meta way back in EU when Zarya started playing AMC mid was he just built like high to the edge and third item, and it just made the god obnoxious. Like Hayzer said, you have pressure, you have burst, you just have like lane presence and threat the whole time. The kind of support in the mid can't push up to clear the wave, and then you can't really dive him either because if he's got his hives up, like he's super fast and just hard to kill. So I think all that on top of it's just a hunter comfort pick for Twig.
All right then. Well, moving on to what I thought was the set of the week, which was SSG versus RNG. And you mentioned maybe the Fenrir with Scream earlier not looking too good, but the Fenrir here with Solar Troll basically, I think, ran this game from what I remember and looked really great in his hands in the solo lane. What are your initial thoughts on this set? I know SSG did end up winning it, but the Renegades do take one game off here, so their bounce back this week looks really strong.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just another case of the lower end teams, like either they're being underestimated by the higher end ones, which I don't think was the case. I would hope not, but they really took it to SSG. I think they didn't pull it out in the end, but it was really refreshing to see a team that's obviously had its struggles come back very strong against what most people would consider one of the top teams, if not the top team in the league. So I thought it was great. I thought it was an awesome set. I really enjoyed watching it. I love seeing Lasber do well.
Yeah.
He's my boy, so I'll root for him no matter what. But no, it's good to see them getting results. I mean, I think it really just goes to show that outside of even United has looked okay, but anybody can take a game off anybody. Anybody can take a set off anybody, and the Renegades are kind of springing back pretty well from their personnel issues.
Sure,
it's good to see.
Biggy, Hayzer, any thoughts on this set, or?
You can go, Biggy.
I mean, for me, that was like the test, because I feel like SSG was playing like really well. I feel like Ghosts were inconsistent, like kind of one set they're up, one set they're down. So to take the game off SSG kind of not really like overly surprised me. I was like, okay, maybe they are improving and fixing their problems. But I think again, it will just be for them, like, can they maintain it? Because like Wraithyn says, like, these teams like can, and sometimes they do take sets, but then it's like nothing happens after. It's like in the next 2 weeks they're just losing again. Like I feel like at the start of this split, United took a game off Ghost and a game off us, and they were like, they had like 3 best of 3s against top teams, and then all of a sudden they're like 0-10, right? And the same kind of happened last split. Like if you look at the standings, nothing's really kind of changed.
Sure.
Like you have the odd upset, but it's like the consistency is what you want. And so for them, that's the next test. Like I'm pretty sure they play us next, so that's like, I guess the next test for them.
Yeah,
big test. I was just gonna say it was another set where Nika kind of bailed SSG out as well. We've seen that a few times where SSG have looked like they were gonna lose games or lose sets, and Nika's just had a monster performance. Dardes on the Afro game one was good as well, but I think Nika went 10-0.
Yeah, 10-0 on Wukong in game one is pretty crazy.
So yeah. But in saying that, SOT had a really good game one as well on the Achilles and a great game two on the Fenrir, which was great to see. But then the Susanoo came out in game 3.
Yeah.
And I think it was punished soundly by SSG. It was kind of one of those where I think SOT was feeling himself a little bit, and he got kind of smacked back down by SSG, by Cherry and Nika, ganking him early, bringing him down. And yeah.
Sure. One other thing I wanted to bring up is I think Ven played Hera all 3 games this set, which I think was probably a strat to take Dardes off Hera, which we've seen him sort of default to a little bit these past couple weeks. You think that that's an effective way to combat Dardes? I mean, he ends up playing like Afro game 1, AMC game 2, and Chang'e, surprisingly, in the mid lane game 3. Are those picks that Dardes can be consistent on if Hera isn't available?
Well, game 1, they first picked the Afro, I think, SSG. So it means that the Hera pick wasn't even just to take it away from SSG. It's something that Renegades must like. There's a few other, I think Hurry played it earlier in the week as well.
I think so, yeah.
Played it. So I guess other mid laners are starting to pick it up finally. I think it's just a good pick that only Dardes was playing for some reason. Hera had a couple bugs and was removed from the game for a bit, I think, if I remember right. So maybe that's why it's been a bit slower for other mid laners to pick it up and start practicing it, and why we've seen it kind of banned rather than picked away. But now I think she's just going to be a pretty good meta mid laner, and I think that's it. I don't think it was necessarily to take it away.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, she's definitely good. I think he then played her against Ghost as well in game 2, I'm pretty sure. I think it's kind of partially like maybe for the rest of the set, you kind of want to avoid giving Dardes, Afro, or Hera if you can in your draft. But also, I feel like if you're against a team that just doesn't abuse you early game, then Hera's like the perfect pick, because that's her problem, right? She just doesn't do a lot for a while, without like kind of help. So, but when she gets to the late game, she's obnoxious like to play against, and I feel like that's probably why they played her that set, because Renegades are a good early game team, and they probably felt like they could get away with it against a weaker early game team.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you see the Ven build he's been doing all weekend, by the way? He's gone full Shoes of the Magi, and then he's back to 800 gold for Warrior's Blessing. It's been bizarre. I don't know if I buy into it yet, but it's interesting.
I'll get big man on
Are you
it.
talking about his Yanis build? Or well, he's been doing it on all of them, right?
I think he's been doing it
on everybody.
everyone,
Yeah, I've seen him do it on Toth and Terra, so it's weird. I don't know if I buy it yet. Ven's always got funky builds though. That's one thing you can rely on from Ven.
I think I saw Paul try that build as well in an SPL game over the past couple of weeks, if I recall correctly.
I think you did on Toth.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense, right? Because you rush the boots. But wouldn't you be better off just trying to get into your build at that point? I don't know. I don't know that I get it.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess the extra true damage is nice, but
yeah, the value from the prots on the like a little bit of prot early game's worth quite a lot, I suppose, before everybody gets their flat pens. So I don't know. I'd have to. I'm gonna believe that they know better than me and say it's probably pretty good.
Part of me wants to try it, but part of me also doesn't want to waste 45 minutes of my life and just an awful, miserable.
Somebody did it in one of my ranked games, and it was not. I was jungling. He was late to the speed, missed his Toth one on it, went to mid, got soloed on the first wave, and I was like, well, this build sucks, man. So yeah, I don't buy it. And then you've ruined my ranked game.
Alright guys, so next week there aren't going to be any SPL games since it's a bye week for the whole league. And I wanted to get our two coaches' opinions on maybe what this bye week can do and what teams are going to use this bye week to do. Because I know, in traditional sports, we often see teams try and make maybe drastic changes in bye weeks and or use it to get healthy and things like that from injuries. In general, in esports, you don't have injuries. So what are some of the things that teams are going to use this bye week for?
Get over COVID.
Anything else?
It's good for us because we can start practicing again.
Sure.
And we have a bit of time to find some form. So it could also be bad for a team like Renegades, where they kind of are just like immediately building momentum, and then they don't get to play the next week.
Yeah.
But I think it just kind of varies from team to team.
Sure.
Be a good time for a roster change if you were going to make one, I suppose. But other than that, I don't know. I think that the teams more towards the top, they might take a weekend off, go and do something. That's what I'd do if I were on one of these teams. I'd try and get a weekend away or something if I could. I'm actually in Glasgow. We're actually locked down at the moment, so I wouldn't be allowed to go outside of our area. But I think in Alpha you guys are allowed to travel at the moment, right? Yeah, so you guys
avoiding it.
I would avoid travel.
Yeah, try to get away to like a cabin, not get away not to like a theme park, but I would try and get out of the house a bit, get away, try and have some fun for a weekend if I were on one of the teams. But yeah, I don't know. It depends. I guess it depends where you're at on the table. If you're more towards the bottom, you might be trying to come up with new strats and practice new play styles. And if you're more towards the top, you might be taking it as more of a rest period.
Yes. All right then. I guess now's as good a time as any to get into the picks for after the bye week. I guess this is week 8 technically after the bye week, and the first set of that week is Radiance versus Obey. And I'm gonna start with you, Biggy. Radiance versus Obey. Who do you got in this? All you got to give me is like a 2-0. You don't have to give a 2-0 or 0-2 or whatever. You don't have to give too much reasoning or anything, but. Quickly, we'll go through the picks.
Always tour Radiance.
Sure. Wraith, how about you?
I'm going 2-1 Obey. I think I don't know. I heard Radiance is going to be trying out a new coach over the bye week. Trying to, I'm just kidding, but no, I think Obey are on an upward momentum. We'll see if I feel like I'm subtweeting Biggie as I'm saying this, but we'll see if the break and the time off has had an impact on Radiance. I've been pretty consistent in trying to vote for the underdogs the whole season. But, I think if Radiance come back and they're true to form, Obey's going to struggle. But we'll see if the bye week allows them to do that.
Sure. Hayzer, how about you?
I don't know. I feel like Radiance might lack some match sharpness, but I'm going to go 2-1 Radiance anyway. I think they'll take it.
Sure. I am going to agree with our, I guess, non-American, non-NA people here and go with Radiance. I think it's going to be 2-0. I think having these time off is going to be good for the team as a whole, and they'll come back stronger than ever. So I got 2-0 for Radiance. All right, the next set of Week 8 is going to be Sanguine versus United, and there have been maybe some rumors going on about United, and I don't know if we should give any credence to them, but even with those rumors afloat, what are you guys' picks for Sanguine versus United? Let's start with you, Wraith.
Man, I went first last time.
No, Biggy went first last time.
If the rumors are to be believed, and depending on how much practice they get, I think United has a solid chance of beating Sanguine.
Ooh, okay.
Considering who they pick up.
All right.
Maybe. Actually, I just thought, can I change my answer?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't give an answer yet.
Yeah, no. Sanguine 2-1 maybe. 2-0 probably. 2-1 maybe.
I mean, is that a 2-0 or a 2-1 for Sanguine, right? You gotta make a decision here.
It's a 2-1.
All right,
2-1. I'll go 2-1.
All right, Hayzer.
I think United's going to have a lot of practice with their new roster, allegedly.
Yeah.
And they're picking up some fine. Well, they're picking up solid talent, so we'll see what happens there. But allegedly, I'll just say that.
All right,
yeah.
Hayzer, who you got? Sanguine versus United.
2-0 Sanguine, easy.
Okay.
I think they dominate that.
Sure.
Set.
Finally, to you, Biggie. Sanguine versus United.
I think Sanguine, but I feel like there's a couple things that can happen. I think when you make roster changes, you can have a honeymoon period. Like everyone's kind of like, okay, well, everyone wants to play with each other again because you've just picked up the players, and it's kind of everyone's a bit more motivated. And I think also Sanguine's a team that the week off might be bad for because I think they're a team that lacks a bit of discipline and punctuality kind of outside the game. So they're not great at showing up on time or having good sleep schedules. So I feel like that might play.
Sure.
But I think 2-1 Sanguine.
All right.
Maybe 2-0. No.
All right, then. All right, let's...
Potential upset, though.
Potential upset. All right, let's start with you on this one, Hayzer. Ghost versus SSG in Week 8. Who you got between them?
Oh, that's a hard one.
It is.
I'm gonna go 2-1 to SSG.
Yeah, okay.
Because I believe in them. And I know them better, and they'll have more of an opportunity to be mad at me if I vote against them. So
okay, that's a pretty good reason. Biggie, how about you?
Yeah,
Ghost versus SSG?
Yeah, I think the same. I think SSG is not going to slow down. They're not going to take a week off, or like maybe they'll take a few days, but they'll probably get back into practice. They're a team that likes to practice a lot. But I think unless they miraculously are just a lot worse somehow, I feel like 2-1. I think Ghost can improve a bit and kind of hash out some issues over the 2 weeks off, but I feel like SSG is just much stronger right now.
Sure. All right, finally to you, Raythan. Ghost versus SSG. Who you got?
I had 2-1 Ghost, but it seems like I'm just the general ignorant outlier. I feel like maybe I believe in them too much, but I think they're gonna bounce back hard after that Radiance set. And
you mean the Renegade set?
You know, they all seem like Renegade set. Yeah, that's what I meant. And I think they all are I know a couple of them, but they seem like the type of players who, when they get beat like that, they come back and they put twice as much effort into getting better.
Sure.
So I think they're going to prep and take that matchup extremely seriously. And so I think they're going to do fine. Whereas I would almost be willing to bet that Space Station trolls.
Okay. I realize I didn't give my picks for Sanguine versus United, so I'll do that now too. I think it's going to be 2-0 for Sanguine. I just think, you got to give the benefit of the doubt to the top team here. And in this Ghost versus SSG, I think this is basically a coin flip. So let's flip a coin and see what happens here. All right, I guess it's going to be Ghost 2-1. All right, moving on to the next set. We have
Not alone.
Sanguine versus PK. Let's start with you on this one, Biggie. Who you got between Sanguine versus PK?
I don't know. I love the PK guys, but it's the classic playing a team higher ranked than them, and I don't know if they've beaten Sanguine this year yet. If they did in the first split.
I don't think so.
So
I don't think so, no.
I think Sanguine's the safer bet, for sure. I'll give PK a game just because I like them, but I don't know.
All right, Sanguine.
Hopefully they work on their issues and show up. That's
sure. So Biggie's got Sanguine 2-1. Wraith, what about you? Sanguine or PK?
I love, I'm in the same boat. I love the nice guys. They're all great dudes, but I'm going Sanguine 2-0.
All right. Sanguine versus PK, Hayzer. Who you got?
Yeah, it's the same. I just don't. I've given PK the benefit of the doubt a few times against top teams, and I feel like I've been burned by it, so I can't do it anymore. I love those guys as well. I think they're great to watch. I love interviewing Neil. He's one of my favorite interviewees, but still 2-0 Sanguine for me.
Sure. I'm the resident PK and Zapman fanboy here, so I'm going to vote for PK. Let's say 2-1. I think they'll take it. You can't have Zap be on the interview this week and not vote for PK. So, I think I'm sort of stuck with that.
Yeah.
All right. The next game for Week 8 is United versus Obey Alliance. Let's start with you, Wraith, on this one. Sort of a battle of the bottom a little bit here. Who you got between United and Obey?
2-1 Obey. Yep.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
2-1 Obey.
2-1 Obey. 2-1 Obey, and that is a belief pick. Because, again, if the rumors are to be believed about a United, I think they are going to significantly upgrade their potency.
Sure. Hayzer, how about you? United versus Obey.
I'm going to go... It's hard. I feel like teams have gotten better at drafting against Obey recently, so they might end up falling down here. I'm going to go 2-1 E United. Maybe a solo diff. We'll see.
Sure. Biggie?
Yeah.
I don't know. This one's really tough to pick. I honestly don't know. I would say maybe E United, but I feel like it's such a big set for Obey because if they lose this set, then I kind of like, okay, now we're back to the bottom. But I'm just going United because I don't know. I couldn't choose.
Sure.
Flip the coin in my head, so.
I gotcha. 2-1, 2-0?
I think 2-1.
All right, 2-1 United for Biggie. All right, I don't know. This is another tough one, just like the Ghost versus SSG one. But I think I have faith in my boy Sino here, so I'm going to give it to Obey 2-1 for that one. All right, last set of Week 8.
I've rethought. Can I change my pick to 2-1 Obey? I've actually changed mine.
Hey, okay.
I'm feeling Obey.
2-1 Obey for Hayzer. That's fine.
Yeah. Still solo diff.
Okay. Last game of Week 8 is Radiance versus Renegades. I think we're starting with you, Hayzer, on this one. Radiance versus Renegades. Who do you got?
I have Radiance. The team that starts with an R will win. Radiance 2-1. Let's say. I'm going to go Radiance 2-1. I think this is actually going to be a really good set. I think after Ghost versus SSG, this is my set to watch. I think Renegade's early game kind of style, when they get last round, a really good early game pick, could be something that Radiance would struggle against. But I'm sure their coach will be more than prepared, and so they'll handle it and win 2-1.
Okay. Hayzer says 2-1 Radiance. I'm sure you're going to say 2-0, Biggie. Is there anything else other than that you can say?
Obviously tour, but I think there's two factors for me is we get to play a set, so we kind of get to play and get some match fitness before we play them, and they don't get to play for a long time. But at the same time, that's kind of an advantage for them because they get to see how we draft, whereas we have a lot longer time in between drafts. Or like we have like a 2-week gap before we play them. We don't get to see what they change. So I don't know. I'm still confident we'll win, obviously, but I don't think it'll be an easy set for sure. And I like those guys. Like I know Lasper. I lived in Denmark like with Lasper, and I obviously know Ro like really well. So I want them to be successful for sure. Just maybe the following week.
All right, finish us off here, Wraith. Radiance versus Renegades. Who you got?
I called the upset at the beginning of the week 8 voting, so I'll side with the Radiance boys this time. I think it's 2-1 there.
Sure.
I think I don't know. We'll see. I actually think that the 2-week break will be bad for the Renegades. Just given what I know about how a lot of them operate with nothing to do, so I actually think they may actually come out a little weaker than they typically do after the break.
Sure. All right, I guess it's just up to me to give a pick here. Man, and I'm torn on this one too. Biggy's probably going to hate me if I don't pick Radiance, though. So I think it'll be Radiance 2-1. I think Renegades, though, have really shown that they definitely do belong in this league, and they can definitely take games off these top teams. So I'll give them 1 game, but I think Radiance will take this 2-1. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Remember that next week, since there's no SPL, there will not be an episode of the SPL Rundown. But we are going to be getting through our backlog of extended cuts from earlier on in the phase, so expect that on the Apam Productions YouTube channel. I just want to remind you guys, if you want to give me suggestions for guests or player interviews, my DMs are open at Apam2 on Twitter or at Apam Productions. And lastly, I would like to remind you guys to check out our YouTube channel and please subscribe, where you can catch extended cuts of my interviews with players, as well as extended cuts of our analyst discussions and all of our past episodes. Thanks for watching again. See you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.